All right, hi. So I'm going to be recreating another 538 graph in Playfair. The reason I am choosing 538 so often, I guess, is just that they make some cool statics. Well, this is actually an interactive, but they make some graphs that have more unusual elements, right? Not just a bunch of line graphs and bar graphs, which is really nice. And this particular one is from their election forecast, their interactive ongoing election forecast. And what it does is it goes down the states here. This is the original in the background. This is my imitation in Playfair. Goes down the list of states. You can actually get all the states if you want to. And it basically gives you a point estimate of what they expect Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump to win that state by. So, right, they expect Hillary Clinton right now to win Florida by about 3.7 points. They give you a confidence interval around that prediction. And then they give you the chance that this state is going to be a tipping point for the election. So not surprisingly, Florida has a really high percentage here. I am aware, incidentally, that I have them backwards in my replication here. We're going to fix that right now. I just had my data flipped. Okay, so first I'm going to show you how I set up my data. And there are some tricks here. So if we look at Florida, for example, you can see that what I did is I have the state column. So there's the state. That's pretty self-explanatory. And then I have these x left and x right. So these are basically the confidence intervals. And so you can see that for Florida, I have an x left of -13. That's this point right here. And I should mention, incidentally, that I don't know the actual data values, so I've just guessed. -13 is seems to be roughly correct. And then I have it ending at 0 on the right. And the reason I have it ending there, when in fact the box is going to go out here, is that I want these to be two different colors. And so I want actually kind of finer control over how this is going to look. And so the way I've accomplished that is I actually have two rows for Florida. And so the first one, you can see I have this group variable here. That's going to control my color. And so I've called this first group D for Democrat because that's going to give me this part of the box. And then I've called this second group R for Republican because that's going to give me this part of the box. As you can see, it goes from 0 to 6. Now, not all of them cross those bounds. So if you look at New Hampshire, for example, no, not New Hampshire, New Jersey, you can see that I have New Jersey going from -23 to -3. I'm going to quit out my email program so that doesn't bother us. That I have my I have it going from -23 to -3 because in fact New Jersey doesn't cross that bound. Now I still have another row for New Jersey, which I need for other reasons, but I just have the R box going from 0 to 0, so that's really not going to be drawn, right? It has no width. Okay, and then I have also put the median in here. That's what I'm going to use to draw these points. Now I don't need to have those. I don't need to use those down here. I really just need that for the states once because I'm just going to tell it that New Hampshire gets -4.8 and so on and so forth. I've put the text of this column in a variable here, so you can see that's D plus 4.8, D plus 12, so on and so forth. And I'm actually giving it a x-coordinate. I'm giving it the x-coordinate 85, which ought to make some sense, right? Like this right here is going to be plus 75. So I'm basically just saying that I want to place this text, or what I'm going to tell Playfair is I want to place this text at margin x, which is another 10% on. We'll see how that works. And then I went ahead and used these duplicated states down here to go ahead and put this text in too. And so Florida's going to have an 18.5% here, right? And it's going to be even more to the right, so I gave that a value of 140, that margin x. Okay, so I'm going to grab that, and I don't need this anymore. Let's come over to Playfair and put that in. So you'll notice that I get a yellow box here. A yellow box means that some of my variables are missing observations. So in particular here, I'm missing one observation or 15 observations here. But that's fine. If you wanted, you could make sure that these were all the right data type, but in fact they are. Okay, so I'm going to go straight on ahead and start doing some stuff. So the first thing is I'm going to get rid of the logo. I'm going to make this about the same width that theirs is, and what the heck, let's make it a little taller than it is right now. Hopefully that'll work out. I'm going to turn off, I'll show you why I'm setting up the grid lines like I'm setting them up right now. But basically I'm going to turn on major X grid lines and minor Y grid lines. Okay, and let's save the rest for later and come over to chart here. So let's get our points on here first. So the first thing I want to do is get those points on here. And remember, I had that variable median, which is going to give me the X location of these points. And then the Y location is state, right? The Y axis here is actually categorical. So I'm going to give it that state. And let's just see what that looks like real quick. Okay, so that looks like this. Looks a little funky right now. Doesn't seem like I'm very close to what's going on, but you will notice that my medians are in the right place. Now, the first thing I want to fix is that this axis is trying to contain the data, and so it goes from negative 12.5 to 2.5, whereas the 538 chart here goes from 75 in the D direction to 75 in the R direction. And then remember, so that I can place my text, I actually want to go significantly more to the right of that. So let's go over to design and axes here, and I'm going to turn on the custom x-axis, and I'm going to manually input, whoops, I need the 50 in there, this axis. Now, I'm just going to have it tick out to 75, but I actually want it to go past 75. So I'm also going to give it a limit. And let's say that the limit goes from that it's going to start at negative 75, because that's fine, but then it's going to go to 150. Okay, and now if I chart that, now I've compressed that space quite a lot. All right, the second thing I want to do here is I want to put in these confidence intervals. Now, in Playfair, there is a geom or a charting element, whatever you want to call it, called rectangles. And the way this geom works is that you specify sort of these either x-coordinate, right? So the left x-coordinate and the right x-coordinate, and then like the top or the bottom y-coordinate and the top or the bottom y-coordinate. So what I'm going to do here is, remember, I have those x left and x right columns. So I'm going to do that. That's telling Playfair that, you know, it needs to make these boxes go from the left to the right. I'm actually going to give them the same y start and y end, which is the state. Because again, this is a categorical access. Normally, maybe I would give this some numerical value and tell it exactly where to start and end. But as it is, all I can do is tell it that, you know, like the box for Florida starts and ends on Florida. And Playfair is intelligent enough to know that this has to have some width. This is not going to be a box that is 0 tall. Okay, and then I'm going to color them according to group. So if you remember, that group variable is the D's and the R's. Okay, I don't really care about the text label there, but that group variable is telling it that some of those are going to be different colors from others. Okay, let's chart that. Okay, we're getting very slightly closer here, right? So here's our now our boxes that are the confidence intervals. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with that. Now the next thing I want to do is a text element geom. So the text element geom, basically you can choose a x and y position. So here I'm going to choose state for my y position, and I'm going to choose margin x for my x position. So if you remember how I set up my data again, margin x was this sort of where do I want to put these labels, and so I wanted these at 85 on the graph, and then I wanted these other ones at 140 on the graph. And then the y variable again is just the state, right? So at the y value of New Hampshire, at the x value of 85, place the text margin. That's where I get my D plus 4.8. The text size I don't want to mess with right now. Let's chart that. Okay. We're making some progress here. Whoa. I was screwing around with color menu, and apparently I did weird things. I am not going to restart this video because I don't want to redo it, but clearly there's a bug right there right now. This is my sort of test version of Playfair. Okay, so that would normally not look like that, and we're actually going to fix that in a second anyways. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that I have left enough space here, and it looks like I've had, so I'm pretty happy with that. I have all the geoms now that I want, basically all this stuff, and so really what I need to do now is a lot of styling, like a lot of styling. So first of all, I'm going to kill out this legend. We don't want that to come back every time we redraw. So I'm going to kill out that legend, and now I'm going to head over to settings, and there's a bunch of stuff to do here. So the first thing is I'm going to give myself a little more space up top. Okay, great. I probably don't need that much space, but that's fine. I'll make it 50. All right, I'm going to make this chart background white. Whoa, my bad. The single quotes there I didn't like. Okay, so the chart background's white. That's great. I don't think I need to mess with any of these other things. We're not going to mess with this stuff. Okay, what else do I need to do? I need to mess with the grids a little bit. So first I'm going to look at my X grids. And all I really want to do here, I think, is I want to bring the opacity of those down a tad. Whoa, that's the 0 opacity, but let's also do that to the normal opacity. Okay, so that's makes those a little less harsh. Let's make it 0.6 maybe. How's that? Okay, that works for me. And then the Y grids, I want to make a bunch of changes. So by default, Playfair wants to make minor grids like this dashed. And this is a little, if you know how SVG works, then you probably know what this means. This Y grid minor dash array is 3 right now. That just means basically that it's 3 pixels off, 3 pixels on, 3 pixels off, 3 pixels on. I'm just going to change it to this empty brackets here. That's going to kill out that. And I'm going to make this 0.6 opacity just like I did with the x-axis. What else do I want to do here? I think I'm fairly happy with this. Now the other thing that's kind of weird here is I have these Y ticks, which I don't like, right? This tick that's connecting the axis to Nevada. And actually the X ticks I want to kill out too. So I'm just going to go over to ticks here, and I'm going to change X tick length to 0, and I'm going to change Y tick length to 0. Okay, gotten rid of those. That looks pretty good. I do in fact have those at 0, right? Yeah, I do. Okay. All right, so this is looking pretty good. What else do I want to do here? I don't really need to mess with the labels. Okay, the colors I need to mess with a little, because I actually do want to replicate these colors over here. So I cheated, and I got these colors from the 538 graphic, and I'm going to put them in here now. So I'm going to, and I'll explain this a little more in a second, but put that in there. Okay, so what I've done, let me make sure this is working. It is, great. So what I've done is 2 things. I've put this, first of all, in the qualitative color scale. Virtually every geom is actually using the qualitative color scale. The sort of eventual goal here is to allow you to use different scales at different times, but right now, essentially everything uses the qualitative color scale. And so what I'm basically telling Playfair right now is that the first color you should use is this hex color, which again, I just copied from 538. If you're not so good with hex colors, I mean, you can look them up, but you can also use English here, but those are not the colors that 538 was using, right? So I really do want to nail those. And the other thing I did was I changed the color menu to this right here. And what that means is the color menu is your contextual menu. And so now you can see from that mess I had earlier, now I just have these two colors to pick from, which is really all I care about for this graphic. All right, what else do I care about? Don't care about any of this stuff right now. I want to mess with my geoms that I have on the graph here. Now, the way 538 did this was they did a white outline with a solid fill. Unfortunately, Playfair can't actually do points with different colored fills and strokes right now. It's sort of an interface problem, so hopefully eventually Playfair will do that, but right now it's kind of a pain. So instead what I'm going to do is I'm just not going to have a stroke. And I'm going to make the fill opacity 1 so that we have a solid fill. And I'm going to get this. Okay, which doesn't look great now, but stick with me for a second. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come over to TextGeom, and you notice that they use a fixed width font for all these things in the right column. So I'm going to change this to Courier. There, now I have that. You actually don't need to have these quotes there. At least I don't think you do, right? Yeah, you don't. Great. All right, so now I have that. I could mess with the size and various other things, but I'm just going to leave that for now. I think I have that how I want it. And then the last thing I'm going to mess with is this rect geom. And so again, the rect geom is what's creating these for me. And what I want to do is I want to bring the opacity of these down quite a bit. You can see that by default they're already 0.8, but I really want something quite a bit less than that. Am I pretty close? Yeah, I'm pretty close. I can mess around and see what I like. Maybe I kind of like that. The other thing I want to do is this categorical rect width is saying remember we have a categorical axis here. It's saying, you know, when there is a categorical axis, you know, what percentage of the total height of that category should the width be? So you can see that if I made that 1, it's going to eat that whole width. Whereas if I make that, like, let's call it 0.7 because I think that's a little closer to what 538 did. So I'm going to stick with that. I kind of like that. Okay, now I still have a lot of stuff to do. I'm still not there. But the rest of this stuff I am basically going to do on the chart. Okay, so let's handle this one by one. Now the first thing that I have to explain is that when I set up my data, I had this thing that was a dash in the state column. And the reason I did that is because 538 has its axes extending up above the final category, and I wanted them to do that too, and there's no great way to do that except to have this dummy categorical category. But I can just delete that, and of course it didn't draw anything anywhere else, so I'm happy with that. Oh, you know one other thing I want to do? They use this black line up the middle. Let's go do that. I'll show you how to do that real quick. So that's going to be in, that is a X grid line. So every one of these, basically you're going to see these 0 opacity things. What else do we have? We have 0 dash array, 0 thickness. What that's saying is that that all pertains to this middle line. And I also have a 0 fill. And so I'm going to make that 0 fill black like they have. I'm going to set that thickness to 1. They've made it the same everywhere. And now if I chart that, does it not like my black? X grid 0 thickness is 1. What if I make it 2? Yeah, that's not taking for some reason. So very possibly, so for some reason this is not applying, so that seems to be a bug. Okay, so that's a little disappointing. I'm going to stick with a larger thickness then, I guess. So that's a bug I'll have to fix, but normally you'd be able to change this, this central line to black pretty easily. Okay, so let's go back to modifying on the chart. So first I'm going to do that. One thing is my points are all blue right now. This point is actually supposed to be red because that point estimate is on the red side of the graph. Because I did my color menu right, I can do that. All right. Ditto with these labels, incidentally. I kind of like the way 538 did this, where they gave the labels the color, and they are also all these pluses because they're supposed to be margins of victory, right? So I'm going to manually modify each of these text labels. Pretty easy. And then they don't have the 0 in there. I'm not going to have it there either. So I'm just going to manually delete that. All right, so this is looking pretty good. These are at the top of the 538 graph, so I'm going to move mine up there too. I don't feel the need to be that exact, but you can see that I am actually vertically aligning these by making sure that the highlight box is just touching the top of the grids here. So let's get all these in place. Have that one really high. Okay. Again, this is not as pretty of a font as they're using. They're using this really nice, tight, compact font. We could make these smaller because I think they actually, that's one thing that I think looks nice on theirs. But they're also just using a different kind of fixed width font that I really like. And unfortunately, Playfair does have some built-in fonts available, but not a heck of a lot right now. I think it's 10 or 12, and it's not really documented. But you can use any just existing web font. Like here I'm using Courier. Courier will work fine. All right. Now, the next thing I want to do is you can see over here, right, these are colored, and they're also left aligned, which these are actually not right now. If you look down here, I mean, they basically look like they're left aligned because all of them have the same number of digits except this one. So I'm going to left align these. They seem kind of confusing that left aligning them pulls them to the right. But right now they're center aligned, and the center's right here, right? And so when you tell it to left align, it moves them, it puts them on that same point. But now they're going to be left aligned. So let's do that real quick. All right, and then let's color them, which we can do right on the graph. If the text element geom had a color option, which maybe it should, we could have just set that to group, and this would have been done for us, or some other variable that we created. But it doesn't right now, so I'm going to have to do this manually. But it's pretty quick to do. I really wish I had my mouse right now. I'm doing this on my laptop with a touchpad. All right, what else? These need percentages after them. Let's go ahead and put that in. Okay, and then there's some labeling to do. They have a label here and a label here. So let's go ahead and add text. And let's say chance of tipping election. It looks like they're using bold, and it's maybe a little small. Again, I'm not crazy about the font that I have here. This is Playfair's default font for this kind of thing, which I believe is PT Sans, maybe. I'm not exactly sure, actually. Yeah, it looks like it's PT Sans. And then they also have this top one, expected margin of victory. So let's go ahead and stick that in here. Expected margin of victory. I'm going to kind of get that up here. Should I also have that bold maybe? Yeah, that looks like it's the same as the other one. So I'm going to put that in bold too. Tiny bit bigger. Oh, the other thing I just noticed, this one should be right aligned so that it is flush up against the side here. All right, and I think I've pretty much done everything I wanted to do. There are some little things that I'm not able to do in Playfair, right? So I'm not, like I said earlier, I'm not able to do that outline. You'll notice I did not do this effect where the line extends all the way through past the name. I actually could have done that if you think about it for a second. I could have, instead of having these be access labels, I could have made these another text element and essentially placed them on the graph, and then the grid would come over here. And to do that, I would have had to have fiddled with the Y labels a little bit, probably. I think the way to do that actually would have been to make the Y labels 0 pixels so that they just wouldn't print on the graph, and you would instead have the ones that I placed on the graph. Similarly, these are left aligned. I could have done that, right? That's not a big deal. I just don't want to mess with it. So I could have gotten a little closer on this edge. The point thing I can't really fix right now. The fonts obviously are a little different. But overall, I'm pretty darn happy with this. I think we got pretty close. So that's it. Thanks.